Everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're here for a webinar on how you can make compliance easy using ColorWorks for GHS compliant label printing. I'm Bonnie Rindle, Product Manager for Epson America, and this is Andy Schertz, Senior Product Manager. We're also joined remotely by Carla Macaluso and Ken Pulowski, our Strategic End User Account Managers. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So to tell you a little bit about Carla and Ken, both of them have a wealth of experience in the auto ID barcoding or print production industries. Carla's been with Epson for 10 years, and she manages the central to western half of the US. Ken has been with Epson for 13 years, and he manages the eastern half of the US as well as Canada. So just wanted to let you know there's just so many great resources here to support you with all of your needs. Our agenda today, we're going to start off by talking about the industry requirements for GHS labeling, and then we're going to do a live demo of our C6000 series printers. We'll mention some of the advantages of our printers over thermal transfer and laser as options. And then we'll talk about ways that you can use ColorWorks to improve processes inside your plant and save costs. We know everyone is on the screen way too much these days, so we want to make this as engaging and interesting and fun and interactive as possible. So feel free to ask questions anytime in the Q&A box, and we will be answering those questions throughout the webinar. So anytime, please speak up. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Andy now to talk about the chemical industry.
Great, thank you, Bonnie. Hi, everybody. So we're going to talk today specifically about chemical labeling, and that means what we often refer to as the GHS label. And this is actually, when we look at our markets, we're very, very diverse where ColorWorks is succeeding, but this consistently is one of the strongest areas that we see. And the reason for that is that back in about 2015, everybody who's making any sort of hazardous goods that need to be transported had to start putting new icons on their labels, and those icons had to be done in red. So the regulators realized that red draws attention, and if you want to convey something that is important for people to see, we're going to have to leverage color. In my opinion, this is the beginning of what we're going to see in many different industries, but hazardous transportation was one of the first that did this. Well, what this did is it kind of put the industry up on end because they had to print icons in color, and all of the printers basically used in this space were monochrome, right? And so what happened is all of a sudden they said, wait, I've got a monochrome printer, and I now need this color element on my label. And their traditional way of printing was to basically do anything in color, like your branding, with an offset press beforehand. And basically, I would bring in pre-print, okay? But now all of a sudden, I sit there and I face a new situation where maybe before the preprint was, Andy's Chemical Company, that was the only thing that I had to print. And then I could put in all my other variable data with a monochrome printer, like flammable or, burn hazard or, inhalation hazard. I could just write that with words in black text. I now need a special red icon that will convey this, okay? But now you think, like most manufacturers, you make a lot of stuff. And not only do you make a lot of stuff, you take a lot of stuff and you package it in different size containers. And when you do this, the different things have different types of warnings, maybe 2 warnings, maybe 3 warnings, maybe 5. Okay. So when you take this, all the different sizes times all the different warnings times the different size of labels, this has an explosion in the amount of preprints you need to have on hand. And even if you try to maintain it, even if you say, I don't care, I have a giant warehouse I want to dedicate to nothing but pre-printed labels, and I will buy hundreds of thousands of each to get a great cost break and all this kind of stuff, I'm still not out of the woods because the regulations are very, very strict, okay? I cannot have a red diamond with nothing in it, okay? And you say, well, it's not, there's nothing. I only had 2 warnings and, I just left a 3rd icon free. That's considered non-compliant because people don't know, did something fail to print in that red icon? What's happening there? I can't have a little orphan icon just sitting out there without a red diamond around it. Then people don't know, is that supposed to be there? Is not supposed to be there? And I'm not even really allowed to have it misaligned, right? Okay, so when I take preprint, I basically have something that was printed somewhere else in a print shop, and then basically I'm hoping my little data stream that I designed lines up with that. If it doesn't line up with it, again, it's not compliant. What does non-compliance mean? Non-compliance means a safety risk for the people who this was intended to be used for, and it means fines for the manufacturer, right? So this led them to think there's got to be a better way. And in fact, there is a better way, right? So rather than trying to order stuff on demand and then hopefully merge this all together in some perfect Nirvana case here where I get everything lined up exactly, why don't I just start with a plain blank white sheet of label material and print everything? And then this way, there's no such thing as misaligning the black with the red because the same printer printed both. And there's no such thing as, oh, I have one that's needs 3 icons and I only have one with 2 icons in my preprint drawer. I'm always ready. And if my safety manager changes anything, I'm back up and running with the new material right away. Okay, so this is the beauty of the on-demand printing. And this is why so many people flock to Epson for this solution. Okay, so basically the whole idea is that now with a full on-demand color printer, I can do everything in one step, right? I can now, however many icons there are, I can put that on there. I make sure I have the red diamond around it. And in fact, I can then start adding branding onto this thing. And I can do this in a full fashion right there, one step with a ColorWorks printer, okay? It's all consistent. And I'm going to talk about some of these other parts of the value proposition in a moment. So let me skip by those for right now. The first thing to realize then is when we talk about this, we say, well, we got a printer that can do this. It's not really our printer that can do this, okay? We have a whole array of printers, okay? And which one is the right one? That mostly really depends on the workflow. Everything we're going to talk about today, mostly in terms of durability of the labels or the idea that I can print on-demand color, that pretty much applies to the whole spectrum of our products. I mean, some stuff will be specifically unique to families, and I'll point that out. But the general idea that print on demand with a reliable commercial printer is the same across the board. But the applications may vary, right? Somebody may need to print one and immediately peel it and apply it to a printer. In that case, I want a printer that can automatically peel the label. And Epson has that feature. And in fact, today, we're really the only color inkjet printer that offers this. So something that's available commonly in the thermal transfer range, the peeler, is uniquely offered by Epson today. Or if somebody says, well, I don't need a peeler, but I want to print like 20 at a time or 10 at a time, and I'm going to do a cut to separate the job. Well, we have printers with cutters, and those could cut at the end of the job or could cut at every single label. Somebody says, I got a big label. Some of these are going to go on a drum. They're going to be, 8 inches by 15 inches, 18 inches, something like that. So you need a bigger printer, and we have the same thing. We have bigger printers that can both cut or peel. Some people will have extremely high-speed operations that says, we do this in a big rush. We print all the labels, and we apply them later with an automatic applicator. We have printers that can go up to 12 inches per second with full color, high, beautiful graphics. And other people need a really small solution. We have the 3500 at the other end of the spectrum, which is the most compact printer, and is really, in terms of the commercial grade printer, is probably the smallest printer that's on the market. Now, I know there's some that are smaller, but I'll beg to say they're not quite at the commercial duty cycle of that. So we really have a full lineup to cover this application. Now, the first question people are going to say is, yeah, I know about color labels. My kid's got a printer, they print some photos, and if I get a drop of water on it, the label is ruined. Okay, so one of the things I want to point out here is just to take a little look. I'm going to reach into my bag of tricks here, and this is a label that's been printed on the Epson ColorWorks printers on a synthetic media, okay? And I have, we all are seeing too much of this, but some hand sanitizer here, which is actually a strong alcohol solution, which would normally be a death blow for most labels. And I will rub that on, I will rub it all around. And I think all you can see is that I basically now have a cleaner label, but I haven't done anything to the image quality on there, okay? And of course, my tissue is perfectly clean. This is something that was really unique about Epson coming into this marketplace, is that not only did we make a beautiful color on-demand label, but we made it really durable. In fact, it's crazy durable, okay? Coupled with the right media, we have tested it against a wide range of chemicals, motor oil, ammonia, Clorox bleach. I mean, if you take a normal thermal transfer on a synthetic media, even a resin rhythm, oftentimes bleach will just wipe it straight off, right? Alcohol, gasoline, Freon. So imagine, again, The people that are making these hazardous chemicals, they're hazardous for a reason. The stuff is kind of caustic, right? And if some of that sloshes out or isn't around in that facility, if that obscures the label, that product's non-compliant. And again, you're back to safety hazards, you're risking fines and this whole thing. We sold a lot of these printers simply because the label alone, even forget about the fact it was color, the label actually could survive the nasty stuff they were shipping. Now, the industry benchmark of duty is called BS 5609. Most people are going to ask this question, okay? Well, the truth is that the Epson printers, the entire family is BS 5609 certified to produce labels. That's always going to be the printer with the ink and an appropriate media. If I print on just a plain paper, it's quite durable, but of course, if that falls into the ocean, as we all know, paper will dissolve and fall apart. And so the paper itself is not structurally sound and meet. Okay, but we do meet BS 5609 across our family. But as I point out, actually, our durability is well beyond BS 5609. This is what people are going to ask you about. This is what they're looking for, but in fact, it's really, you know, if I just were to revert for a second, it's this list because they're going to have their own nasty thing that they're worried about, and they're going to wonder if it's durable, and the answer is going to be almost always yes, okay? So let's go ahead and take a look at the printer itself, and I'll show you here right here. So this is probably part of our flagship line here. This is the C6000 series, okay? So I pointed out a whole range of products, but the C6000 series is really, especially we're talking about GHS printing, which means we're almost for sure replacing somebody's thermal transfer printer, and they're looking for a printer family that's as close to that as you can get, okay? And that's our 6000 family, available in 4-inch wide and 8-inch wide with cutter and peeler. So we've got it pretty well covered. So most notably, this printer is right away ready to print from a ZPL data stream. So literally your accounts, and this is an important thing because when you're going out there, your customer says, you're showing me some interesting technology today, but I'm not going to upend my whole warehouse to try it out here and reprogram everything. The beauty is with the ZPL functionality, you can basically try it as is before we get into the color. Means basically unplug the Zebra printer that's connected to the network, plug in your C6000 series printer, and just start printing. Okay, once they're comfortable with the technology, and I'll show you some of the reasons why I think they should be comfortable with the technology, then you can tell them how they can now colorize that job. But you can see right here, this is the high-speed printer, okay? And in fact, this is using our new print mode. But I'd like to tell people that they're not maybe aware that we've added a new mode to the printer that allows for very high-speed printing, okay? And it's available with the newest driver. Let me take you and show you a quick video that really demonstrates this side by side. Okay, so the printer on the left is printing the traditional way, and the printer on the right is using our new high-speed mode. And you can just see the throughput is dramatically higher. What's the difference? The difference is in the traditional operation, the printer will pause and reset itself once per every single label, okay? In the right printer, it basically skips that step. It will pause approximately every 24 inches, okay? And you can see just a huge advantage in performance. So I urge everybody to be aware of that because this really can boost the throughput. So let's take some look at some of the other options of our printer here that we're going to talk about today. One of the things is I'm comparing it against the thermal transfer printers, and I point out that, you know, I hope anybody has had the chance to change a ribbon on a thermal transfer printer, right? Which is basically you're pulling off all this Mylar and you're throwing it away, and then you're lining up these spools, and then you're threading it through like an old movie projector if anybody can remember those things, and you get it back around and you wind it and you get all the wrinkles out of it. And what is it like on a Epson printer? It's basically step one, and I'll close my eyes. Step two, okay? That's pretty dramatic. People can do that instantly, right? How do I load media in this printer? I have a fancy door here that can open up one way. Maybe if I can't get to it, I have to get to it from the rear. I can open it from the rear, okay? Or take the whole cover off altogether. And my media is loaded very simply on a spindle like this. You can buy extra one of these. And in fact, I urge people to have some extras laying around. Preload all your different size medias on it so that when you're ready, you just basically take this, drop straight into the machine, and then I just feed it right into the print path, and the printer itself will then draw the label in, find the top of form, and you're good to go. Yeah.
Hey, Andy, I had two questions come up.
Yeah, Bunny.
First question is, with the high-speed batch printing mode, does it affect the resolution at all?
So there's no impact on the resolution of the printer. There's no impact on the image quality. The real difference is that it is not going to stop to sense the edge of every single label. So if I had a very, very little label and I was really worried about alignment, I might not want to use this mode. But actually the printer is so accurate that even over 24, 26 inches, you're not going to see really any visible creep. But that's the only thing, because it's not going to stop every single label to sense. And other than that, the print quality, the image mode are identical.
Great, perfect. And just a reminder to everyone that feel free to put in your questions anytime in the Q&A box. We'll answer them throughout the presentation. Second question is, can we get a new speed chart showing the new high speed mode and what speeds it can run at?
Okay, so the speed chart is going to be a little bit more of a challenge. And the reason I say that is that the actual print speed is the same as is normally on the specification sheet. And this mode did not actually increase the speed, but it increased the throughput. And I know that sounds a little bit odd, but our print speeds rated are the speed of the printer while printing and do not accommodate the time it might take in between labels to either get the print job or do something like that. That gap adds some time to the thing. So what this mode does is it basically eliminates the interlabel gap, thereby boosting throughput. So it's going to vary. I mean, obviously, if I had a gigantic label that's 25 inches long, it may not have any impact on speed because the majority of the time is actually printing and almost none of the time is in between gaps. If I have extremely little labels, the speed will be huge, right? So if I'm printing some sort of small, maybe cannabis vial label, the speed impact will be huge. So it varies. I don't think we can digest it into a table other than to point out that it's eliminating that gap. So thank you for the questions. And in fact, I think what will help is, we keep this as interactive as possible, and it's not just, me talking. So at any point, if you see something you want to ask questions about, please let me know. Now, the control panel on here has got a full control panel with menu keys. It's very simple and intuitive to operate. It's a color panel, right? So I can really see what's going on here. I can see my consumable status. It's, again, made to be used by people who are maybe not experts on the printer, right? So, of course, I, know all about the printer. This is all I ever think about my whole life. It's just this printer. But other people, they're doing some sort of job, right? They're filling drums or something like that. So something might happen with the printer and they don't know what to do. This pictorial panel will guide them through step by step. There's a jam. Oh, it'll say, open the cover. Okay, open the cover. Look here. Oh, I look here. It's showing me a picture step by step of everything that's happening on here. And eventually I can get to it. And one of the things I like to point out about this printer is very simple, but we're talking about going into the chemical industry. We're talking about industrial users. What if a printer label jams? Okay. The beauty of this printer is I can literally open it up. I can get to everything. It'll be hard for you to see on the feature here, but I can actually open covers and put my hands all the way through here. There's no hidden passageways for labels to get stuck that I can't get to, and I cannot clear the situation and get it going. If you've ever seen somebody who's got the boss beating on their head to get all those drums filled, if that thing jams, they're not going to be gentle with it, and you don't have to be gentle with this printer, and you can get everything to clean it out. So this thing will guide you through. It's easy to clear. It's easy to operate and everything like that. I just really think this is a great printer, and let me talk a little bit more about it. I'll show you some slides now. One of the things, that makes it so impressive is the technology that it's based on, okay? And so, a lot of people, that know me will know that I make a lot of car analogies, and I'm going to just go right in for one right now too. So the thing that makes your car, really the engineering you pay for your car is not the cup holder. It's not the, maybe the little cool trim on the dashboard or something like that. It's actually the engine and drivetrain. That's where the money is. And if that's not good, it doesn't matter anything else, okay? And this is what is in the essence of all of the printers is our precision core technology. That's Epson's technology. Nobody else has it, okay? That's our own technology. It was a huge engineering R&D expense layered upon decades of experience in this industry. And that is the crux of this. What you're really paying for is a printer with this technology, okay? But you say, well, Andy, nobody cares about the technology. They do for two reasons. One, the print quality, which I'll talk more about in a second, is really unparalleled on the Precision Core. But number two is the reliability. This type of head technology is basically made to be permanent. It should last the life of the print mechanism. The print operation is cool, and it's not involving any necessary wear on that print head. And one of the most common questions people ask me is, what's the cost of a spare print head? And I go, I don't actually know. And I really don't know, because it's not something that needs to be considered with. I mean, if it did break for some reason, it's covered under the service warranty. And I always urge everybody to get extended warranty, but it's not a consumable. Okay. That's in a sharp contrast to thermal transfer printers, where the print head is a consumable. It's going to wear out quick, and it's going to cost a lot. It's actually a big expense. And I know I've come from manufacturers of those. It's a huge revenue stream for those manufacturers. So that head is going to last the life of the printer. And what that means is uptime, which means productivity. The second thing it means is print quality. Okay. The Precision Core head is in particular a 600 or 1200 DPI head, depending on the mode you use it, that will generate really stunning results. Of course, beautiful color. Also, that means color gradations and shading that is only possible with that high resolution variable droplet size, which means each little dot can be any multiple of sizes. And it just makes for incredible print quality. So here you can see some samples of like 0.2 fonts. This is a super, super exploded image, and you can just see how sharp those lines are. Okay. Or let's take a look. Oh, sorry, I forget the slide. So it's very, very sharp technology. I'll show some other slides that compare the print quality in a moment here. Okay. So let's look at the alternate technologies that likely people might have either used or are considering to continue using for the GHS labeling applications. So this was the slide I thought for a moment was coming up. This is thermal transfer. And what's interesting is people will always say, oh, thermal transfer looks good. And what they mean is, well, standing from across the shaded room, looking across the distance, it sure looks black and dark. And it does. A thermal transfer does make a very black image. But the darkness of the image is not what makes the image good. It's the detail. Are the barcodes sharp? Are the fonts readable? Well, when you really get that label up close and you start looking at it, you're going to see it is really not so good. Okay. And in fact, I showed you earlier the durability, right? I took the chemicals, I showed you a list of chemicals. Thermal transfer can also yield a pretty good durable label, but only if you use the premium resin ribbons. This is very, very important. So if I just go get some cheap ribbon and I stick it on my label, it's not durable at all. In fact, they will say it scratches off, rubs off, it smears easy. It's not made for that whatsoever. You're going to have to buy a resin ribbon. And later we'll show what that cost of that ribbon is. But let me talk about what that resin ribbon means. That resin ribbon means I basically have to slow that printer down to 2 IPS. Okay, maybe I can get 3 out of it, oftentimes 2. And by the way, I have to jack the heat up like crazy to image that ribbon. Okay, where in contrast, you look at this sample here, we're getting much better print quality on the 6000 series at 4.7 IPS, right? So it's not speed dependent. We don't have to slow down to make a durable label. So let's take a look at that, what that means a little more close up. This is that same label, but I've zoomed in on the barcode. Okay, and you can see that at 14 IPS, yeah, the barcode looks black, but the lines are not distinguishable to really read. I get down on 2 IPS, I get much better print quality. But then again, when you really look at it, it's not that good. Okay, and you look at the 6000 series, that's basically its lowest quality mode.
Hey, Andy, one more question came up. Would a downstream barcode verifier ever be needed with these printers?
Okay, so the question is about barcode verification, and I have a lot of experience in that. That's the idea where you will basically put a verifier on this printer to measure the barcodes. So let's talk about the 2 different technologies. A thermal transfer has a lot of transient errors that come in. One of them is a ribbon wrinkle, right? So you're printing along and the ribbon wrinkles, you check the first label looks good, you look at the last label looks good, but in between there were some bad ones. You won't know. In that case, you need a barcode verifier that's scanning. If you have a critical application where you cannot have defects, I have to have a barcode verifier that scans it on the way out to make sure that there were no bad barcodes. The second thing is a thermal transfer printer is susceptible to overburn and underburn. Overburn means I'm applying too much heat. All my lines are getting too juicy. All my white lines are getting too skinny. It's not a scannable barcode. Might look black. It's not scannable. Or it could be the other way. Okay. Without a barcode verifier actually measuring the quality of that barcode, I don't know if it's good. Okay. So there's a lot of transient failures that the only way I could really be sure, and even a pixels, the print heads could wear out and I lose a bunch of pixels and there goes right to the middle of my barcode. Again, None of these things will be caught by the printer. It doesn't know what's going on, okay? And so really, for critical applications, we always urge on a thermal transfer printer that you use an inline barcode verifier right at the output. Let's talk about color inkjet, okay? Specifically Epson inkjet. The printhead can actually detect if any of the pixels have failed, okay? So even without a barcode verifier, if there were a print defect, the printer itself will know it and can then warn you to take corrective action. Now, in most cases, the printer will actually detect the problem, fix it itself, and it will have never even interrupted production. But if for some reason the problem cannot be fixed by the printer itself, it alerts the user, okay? So I don't have a problem with something happening to the printhead because I can know my own health. How about the overburn, underburn, and all these kind of things? The precision core is so accurate, okay? And just sort of fundamentally, it's not this complex algorithm of ribbon and media and all this kind of stuff. It's going to produce an image already straight. So the net result is the inkjet printer is actually a more durable method of producing barcodes without having to require a verifier on the outside. So it's kind of a long answer. I have a lot of history on that thing, but the general answer is it really doesn't require a verifier to get the same or even higher level of confidence in your barcodes. So obviously, in that discussion, I talked about some of the advantages there of the thermal transfer over the inkjet, but it really, the barcode and imaging is a lot involved there, okay? So when a barcode thermal transfer printer, I have the speed of the image, I have the type of ribbon, I have the type of media, I have the head pressure, I have the head temperature. And these all are like this complex formula. If you turn this one up too much, it lowers this one. It's almost impossible to set the printer up without even at least a handheld verifier to at least check at least the labels to get it set up. An inkjet printer is just not like that. You basically put the media in, you program it, out comes scannable good stuff. Okay. Of course, the thermal transfer printer is really only monochrome, and they've attempted to create some color solutions which are cost efficient and have all kinds of issues around them like that. So that bullet there, self-healing, self-maintaining, that's a critical element. That's what I described about the reason we don't need the barcode verifier. And again, we're going to produce very durable labels at maximum speed versus the slow speed you have to use. So you may have a competitive printer that says, I can do 14 IPS. It sounds wild, impressive, wow. And you say the Epson is only just under 5 IPS. But in truth, when we talk about the chemical industry in GHS and high durability, you're probably comparing 4.7 IPS, 5 IPS to 2 IPS on a thermal transfer. So we got a big speed advantage. Now, people also talk about laser printers. Now, laser printers are interesting technology. They can print color. They can make a pretty good looking image. And people will sometimes use this for producing labels. Where they are okay on their image and their speed, they have a downside, which is almost all laser printers were designed to print on plain paper, single sheets of paper, right? They're already cut sheet mechanisms, okay? And they almost always will have some sort of convoluted path. A lot of times they'll suck from a drawer, they bend it around, they come around. They might do a complete S between in and out, okay? Now, if you're trying to peel a label off the liner, what are you gonna do? You're gonna bend it. So the laser printer is a fancy type of label peeler. The only problem is it peels the label within its own mechanism, and the label goes one way and the liner goes another way. And once it jams, and if it sticks to the drum, you're not going to be able to recover. You cannot just get out the drum with a screwdriver, scrape that off there. So the basic problem with the laser printer when it comes to labels is it doesn't like labels, okay? And even if it survives that convoluted paper path, or maybe they've done something to try to make the paper path straighter somehow, they're still going to run into the dreaded fuser. Well, what's a fuser? Laser printer puts a bunch of colored dust on the media, and then it's going to run it through a high pressure heat and pressure rollers to fuse that image onto the media. So, but remember, a label is adhesive underneath that. Well, what happens when you take the rollers and you squish it in between some hot rollers with adhesive? The adhesive pops out, right? And next thing you know, that adhesive starts getting and contaminating the fuser rollers. And the next thing you know, the label gets stuck to the fuser roller, and rather than deciding to exit on its way to go onto a drum, it decides to make a round trip and go back into the printer. So laser printers can be a real hassle to keep running, okay? And I can say that we have replaced many laser printers where people forget about image quality, forget our cost, they just want to be uptime. So that's the problem, at least you have to think about on the color laser printers out there. Hey, Bonnie, I think I got a question.
Yes, sorry to interrupt you, Andy. Well, another question came in. Will the presentation slides be made available?
Yes, the presentation slides available, and we record these links. The link will be available to be looked at later on also.
Perfect,
Okay,
thank you.
So when we compare that to inkjet, well, first thing I talked about a paper path, okay? So it's a little bit difficult to see because I don't have a profile view of the 6000 series, but basically the roll goes straight through the printer. I could take a little metal ruler, I could stick it right straight through the print path. So I'm not bending the path. So that dreaded S curve that goes into most lasers doesn't exist. It's a straight path. The technology is cool. That heat and pressure roller or the thermal, head and roller pincher, none of that's existing, right? In fact, the head is not even touching the media, okay? And the image quality is actually probably the best, okay? I can show you reasons why the laser printer, because of the heat buildup on a long run and things, the color shifting can occur and stuff like that. The image is very, very stable on a printer. In fact, I'm sure if anybody has a big blown up photograph in their house, there's a very, very high chance that you took that to a professional shop that was actually printed on an Epson printer. We really are the image quality leaders. So, this is really, I think the premier technology for GHS labeling, and that's why we've been so successful in this space here, Now, another thing, I've been talking to this point about the printer and the image and the label you produce, okay? Well, that's all cool, but it's not going to be a solution if it does not fit with my software. So most companies are running some sort of software that their operation counts on, okay? And the beauty is we probably have the most direct native connectivity of any printer in the color spectrum, right? So we work closely with all our lead partners like Nice Label, Bartender, TechLink, Software, even SAP, to make sure that we have native drivers so they know exactly how to drive our printers, and it's very, very efficient, and it's driven the way they would have traditionally driven maybe a thermal transfer printer, right? So they all have these printers, they're very familiar with them, and we integrate natively. Also, we have robust Windows drivers, Linux drivers, and Mac OS drivers that allow us to connect in a whole plethora of other ways out there, right? So we have really focused on connectivity, and I'm just going to remind that one word other again, ZPL. We are the only ones that actually have ZPL. So if you want, and if you're just printing straight ZPL, you can even do that with these printers, okay? And even if you are in a ZPL environment, you can use the ZPL and later add color elements to it, because we've actually augmented the ZBrush language to add color commands into a language, into the ZPL in a consistent fashion. So really broad connectivity. Okay. The next thing I'd like to just talk quickly about is apps and device administration. And again, if I were to give an overarching theme about ColorWorks, it's that we are targeting the commercial enterprise user, and we're trying to make sure that we provide all the tools they need to manage this big environment. The most recent addition to our suite is the apps and device admin software. What is that? That's a remote management software, because a lot of our facilities are not going to be just, a laptop sitting next to one printer and one guy operating the thing, right? It's going to be that they have multiple plants. In fact, we've already done deals in the chemical space where they've got printers in India, they got printers in Malaysia, they got printers in Germany, got printers in Ohio, right? Well, if you're the IT manager and you've got a printer in India you got to manage, that's a long flight. I've done it. It's not, you don't get there quick, right? So, but I still need to maybe do things with that printer. And by the way, I don't have 3 printers. I have like 200 or 500 or something like that. And these all need to be consistent. Okay, if I take you into the menu of the printer, there's all kinds of settings for speed and mode and this and that and that. If I have 500 printers, how do I make sure they're all configured the same, right? So this is what Epson Device Admin does, right? So this is a whole suite of tools that lets me manage this enterprise. So the most basic thing is it lets me see all the printers in my fleet, right? So I can go into a console and I will see all my printers, everything I have there. Now, I don't see them in one gigantic list because that list is going to be, again, huge. I can group these printers into groups that make sense for me, right? So all my printers for receiving function, or maybe my grouping makes sense by plant, like the Ohio plant and the Florida plant or something. Whatever you do, you can take and create groups and then organize the printers into groups. Once you put it in a group, you can then act upon the entire group rather than having to touch in each individual printer. So let's say that I have a special configuration for my Ohio plant. They got 50 printers in there. I define that group. I can actually make a golden configuration with all the settings, everything the way I want it. I test it on my lab printer. When I'm good to go, I tell Epson device admin, broadcast this to all 50 printers in the Ohio plant. Epson admin will then make sure that 100% of the printers in that group are configured with that configuration. So somebody says to you, Andy, is it all set? You go, yeah, it's done. But I did not have to go to each printer, make each setting, and do this individually. That's the power of this tool. It's a similar thing with firmware upgrades. If all of a sudden, we discovered a bug or there's an enhancement, I want to take advantage of it, and you say, I now need to deploy this firmware. Well, can you imagine if I have to sit there, I've got 500 printers, if I have to manually apply the firmware to 500 printers, I mean, I'm going to be there all day long, and most of that time I'm just going to be sitting there waiting to hit the enter button, right? Well, not with Epson Device Admin. Epson Device Admin, I can basically take that firmware, I can schedule my deployment, and it will do all the rest. And even fancy things like, let's wait till the Ohio plant shuts down, so don't do it till 7 p.m. Eastern time. Okay, fine. So it will do it in the evening, but I'm going to be at home already having my dinner at that point. It's going to do the work overnight for me and stuff like that. So quite sophisticated. And even things like alerts, right? So the printer's running in the background. These are mission critical printers. I got to know it's working, but the printer's actually printing in a batch mode, let's say, so it's printing back there. What if it jammed? Who will know it jammed? Unless you go look at it, right? But how about if I can just send an alert right to my smartphone? Oh, the printer over there is jammed, and I can now go take proactive action. So it gives you those kind of capabilities and even more, right? I can do reports that will let me know how much ink I'm using, how many pages or labels I'm printing. It really gives you a ton of information. So again, another tool from Epson for the ColorWorks printers. Hey, I think we have another question, Bonnie.
Yes, we have two questions that came in. First one is Epson Device Admin really free?
Yeah, it's not free. You have to buy Epson printers. No, actually the software is free. You can download it even if you don't have Epson printers, but yes, it's free. There's no charge. You just basically go onto the website. We can give some detailed instructions and basically download it. It'll ask you a little questionnaire, but it's just, it's getting just so that we understand the market more. There's no gate or fee for that.
Perfect. Second question is, can the C3500 be driven by SAP?
Okay, the C3500 is connected in many SAP environments, but currently the C3500 does not have the same connectivity of the C6000 series and C7500. So in a SAP environment, the 3500 has to be operated using the Windows driver, okay? So I think for a lot of SAP environments, people will prefer the 6000 only because you can use like a ABAP printing and basically bypass it. So, but currently the 3500 only works in SAP environment with the Windows driver. So at that point, I'll let Bonnie take over and show you some other information.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and close this out. Our last section is we wanted to talk about ways that you can improve your processes with ColorWorks and spark some ideas about ways to save costs. So the typical way that most companies are using to do color label printing today has huge opportunities for improvement with lead time, with inventory, with cost, because the industrial label printers that are in a warehouse can only do black. So that's why most companies have to order large quantities of pre-printed color labels from an outside vendor that has a huge flexo press. And then they get in those pre-printed labels and they do a second step. They use their thermal printers to do the black printing the part number, lot number, all that variable data. And because it's so much work to set up those huge presses, they have to create plates, they have to set up the artwork. That's why you really get a lot of price breaks the more you order. So you find that usually you get nice price breaks when you order 20,000, almost up to like 100,000 labels is what you would need to order in order to amortize a setup cost. And when that happens, then you end up with these massive stock rooms of pre-printed labels that look like this. because every single change in label design requires its own set of pre-printed labels, and then you have to order tens or thousands. So that just creates a huge mess. Someone has to manage it, someone has to reorder. Whenever you change a label design, let's say your company logo changes, or you decide to color code a label a little bit differently, all those existing labels become scrap. And then also having all these types of pre-printed labels, you're always having to do changeovers on the printer, which creates downtime. So with the current process most people are using to do color printing, there's just a huge opportunity to save lead time, labor, and cost. So we talked about the process. Now let's talk about the cost. So for these high quality, high durability labels, we compared the cost of the Epson solution, the printing plus the media versus laser and versus thermal. And you can see here that for these types of labels, Epson offers the lowest total cost solution that's BS 5609 certified. Speaking of costs, we also developed a TCO, which means total cost of ownership calculator tool. So this is designed to compare the total cost of printing versus two-step printing with thermal transfer. So it takes in the hardware cost, the consumables cost, the media costs, the scrap costs, puts all that together. Ken or Carla, feel free to contact them. They'd be more than happy to help work with you or follow this tool to run the analysis for your company. Okay, and then our last section is we just want to spark some other ideas with you about other ways you can use ColorWorks in your companies besides just chemical drum labeling. So some companies use our printers on mobile carts. So they put a label printer along with a PC, maybe a scanner, and a mobile cart, and allows the work to be performed, all the documents to be printed where the work is performed. So just eliminates a lot of the waste of walking back and forth, getting to what you need, maybe mislabeling. Another use for printers that we've seen is people use them to print out facility signs and labels in their plants or facilities. So like warehouse racks or safety signs and labels. Instead of having to order through the catalog and pay $3 or up to $10 per label, you can use ColorWorks to print those labels on demand, not have to wait for them, print the exact size and shape and color that you want. Also, a lot of companies have Lean or Six Sigma process improvement initiatives going on. So this is where ColorWorks comes in really handy. You can use our printers to create bin labels. They're color coded, they show a picture of the part on the label, and then it makes it so much faster and easier for the operator to find the part that they're looking for. Also, people have been colorizing warehouse put away labels. So color coding where the color coding to associate where it should be placed in the racks makes it a lot faster to put it in the right place, makes it a lot faster for the picker to pull the right item and find it when they were getting it ready for shipping. And then shipping labels too. So even something as utilitarian as a shipping label, people are finding ways to colorize it and personalize it. So maybe putting a color ad at the bottom, showing another product that the customer may be interested in, maybe a coupon for their next order, maybe even putting something personalized related to that customer. As you see, more and more packaging and everything is becoming more personalized in order to encourage repeat buying experiences. So that's another way you can use our ColorWorks printers. So we threw a lot of information at you today. We hope that was very helpful. There's also a lot more resources available if you want to learn a little bit more. So we have case studies and success stories posted on our webpage. The slide deck, as Andy mentioned, is going to be available. Just reach out to Ken or Carla. They'll be happy to email you the slides. And then everyone that registered for this webinar will also get a link to the recording. So through the slides or through our website, you can get case studies, success stories. You can also find links to videos. And in summary, we just see a lot of ways that ColorWorks can help you to improve your business. It's very easy to use. It eliminates a lot of the hassle with thermal transfer, the hassle of pre-printed labels. Color coding can help you reduce errors, misshipments, mispicking. Adding pictures will help identify products. It also improves branding. So we hope that this was helpful for you, and we thank you so much for attending. We're going to close this out with just an open Q&A. Ken and Carla, if you want to turn your cameras on, they're also available here to answer any questions that come up.
Hey guys, thanks so much for joining today. Appreciate it. Any questions? No questions, please. Andy and Bonnie, you must have done a very good job.
It's so clear. There's no possible area of confusion left for anybody.
Zero. We expect a big spike in sales, don't we now?
I see a thank you. Appreciate that. I see a great job.
I'd like to point out while we're just wrapping up here that video log, which Bonnie just mentioned there really are some great assets in there. So one of them is we have an unboxing video that really shows like soup to nuts how you take the printer out of the box and set it up and do all that, and some common problems that you might actually have while you're working with the printer. I think that's a good resource, and that's really something you even could, you sold one of these, you can send it to the end user, give them that link. I think it's going to be valuable to them and maybe save some questions. And for people that are, I talked about thermal transfer versus, inkjet at the technology. I've worked on both sides. I understand it well. I talked about it quickly. We have a whole video on that really gives you a lot of detail. And I mean, we have both printers sitting right there, and it's a great resource. So I think our video library, we're trying to stress adding video tools for you guys so you can go out and look at these in the future. I think check those out. I think they're good. And especially there's a success story very specifically on Lubrizol where they actually put these printers to test, and they have quite some positive things to say about them. So that's a real case study that's poignant to what we talked about today.
Mhm.
We also have printed label samples. So we'd love to get a PDF for your customers that we could print actual samples, but if they don't have one to provide, we can provide printed label sample packet.
And also, guys, just to push off on the question that Andy got in regard to throughput and print speed relative to the batch mode, Carl and I'd be really happy to help you with that because it does vary based upon the overall label size. So if you wanted to drill in on a particular customer, Carl and I can help you with that.
Oh, one more question. What is the process for demo? I guess either Carla or Ken, why don't you guys take that on?
I'll grab it, Carla. We're always happy to help with demos, no question. I think a lot of you guys already know the drill that we would like to check some boxes prior to sending the box to the customer, because of course we're all interested in them having a positive experience when that printer lands, but always happy to help for sure.
All right, let's go ahead and close it out. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.